Then at this time, I'll call to order the regularly scheduled board meeting for the Port Authority for the City of St. Louis on August 10, 2023, held via Zoom. Can we have a roll call, please?
Commissioner Cone,
Present.
Commissioner Kay,
Present.
Commissioner Williams,
Present.
Chair McBride.
Present. Moving on to the approval of minutes for a meeting held on July 13. Is there a motion to approve?
So moved.
Second, Williams.
And properly moved and seconded. May we have a roll call vote, please?
Commissioner Cone,
Well, hang.
Aye.
And if I could interrupt, let me interrupt the roll call vote. We have Commissioner Miller has just joined us. So I want to, Commissioner Miller, we're taking up the approval of minutes for a meeting held on July 13. So if you could start that, yeah, Cone says, proceed.
Okay, there I am. Aye. Present and aye.
Very good. All right. Janet, could you continue with the roll call vote, please?
okay. Commissioner Cone,
Aye.
Commissioner Kay,
Aye.
Commissioner Williams,
Aye.
Chair McBride.
Aye. And the minutes are approved. We're going to move on to resolution 23 PT 21, approving the request for a FY24 administrative grant from MoDOT. Susan, will you walk us through that, please?
Yeah, good morning, everyone. Every year, the Port Authority receives money from the state legislature towards port projects. And so this first one is a grant for administrative costs. And so this before you is a request to accept $21,000 and change, and to expedite that process or to effectuate that process, the state asks us to send a letter. So in your packet is Neil's letter to Stacy Fowler at MoDOT requesting the funding. And if this measure resolution is approved, then we'll send this letter, and the state will then forward us this admin grant for FY24.
And what does the grant go to?
It's various expenses, things, we typically spend it on legal expenses, and it's engineering, we can use it for engineering. The letter from Neil identifies some of the other costs, monitoring the Port Authority leaseholds, dues for port-related organizations, that kind of thing.
And the amount is for $21,223.88.
That's right, $223.88.
And is that up or down from last year's grant?
Pretty much the same. The state gets a pot, and the state MoDOT divvies it up on behalf of the, they have a formula. And so MoDOT is the one that makes the distribution.
Very good.
About the same.
Any questions from the commissioners for Susan on this resolution? Hearing none, I'd entertain a motion to approve resolution 23 PT 21.
So moved. Alderman Cone.
Second.
Second.
Been properly moved. It's been properly moved and seconded. Was there a request for previous roll?
Yes, there was.
Properly moved and seconded with a request for previous roll. Is there any objection to that request? Hearing none, motion passes and the resolution is approved. Resolution 23 PT 22 relates to the receipt of $25,000 for state professional engineering grant. Susan, can you walk us through that, please?
Yes, this is more of the same kind of process. And so this particular year, there was, I think there was $200,000 that was allocated to the port collectively. And at our meeting a few months ago, we divvied it up, and the port, we received 25,000. There were 6 of us asking for, 8 of us asking to split it, and so we split it, and that's our $25,000 share. And it's for engineering towards Port Authority projects.
Okay, and are these for any projects we've already identified?
Yes, we are going to use them for HDR, the engineer that's working on the South Riverfront redevelopment project. And this particular grant will trigger a matching 25,000 grant from the ARPA funds that we received.
Very good. Any questions from the commissioners for Susan on this resolution?
So Susan, is this just for one project or for projects?
It's for engineering for any projects. We are choosing to use it for the HDR contract.
And the HDR contracts has multiple projects on it, or just the one at the transfer station?
It has the South Riverfront redevelopment, so whatever components go into that project. So there's a couple of surveys, there's the environmental and the demo for the incinerator. So anything associated with that project is in their scope of work.
Okay, thank you.
If there are no further questions for Susan on this resolution, I'd entertain a motion to approve resolution 23 PT 22.
So moved, Alderman Cone.
Second.
Previous roll.
It's been properly moved and seconded with a request for previous roll. Is there any objection to that request? Hearing none, the motion passes and the resolution is approved. I will take up resolution 23 PT 23, ratifying a MoDOT grant and authorizing execution of a grant agreement for the South Riverfront Development Project. Susan?
This is now capital improvement funding, and we applied for the grant last year, a year and a half ago, actually, and received $640,000, and this too will trigger an ARPA match. So this $640,000 will go towards the South Riverfront redevelopment project in state funding, and it will trigger $640,000 from the ARPA funds, also for the South Riverfront redevelopment project. And these are capital improvement funds. So the request before you is we're asking you to ratify our application for that grant, and then once we receive the grant, entering into a funding agreement with the state for receipt of the funds.
And what's the amount of the grant?
$640,000 from the state, and then the same amount, $640,000 from ARPA.
Okay. And is this earmarked for a particular purpose?
Yes, we'll go towards the South Riverfront redevelopment project. So I'm not sure which is going to happen first, the demolition of the environmental work, and then the demolition of the incinerator, or the relocating the trash transfer building.
All right. Any questions for Susan on resolution 23 PT 23? When would we expect that money to come in?
It's in the bank right now. We have to spend it by the middle of June next year.
Okay, June 2024. Very
That's
good.
right.
If there are no further questions, then I'd entertain a motion to approve resolution 23 PT 23.
So moved, Alderman Cone.
The second, Commissioner Miller.
Previous roll.
Been properly moved and seconded with a request for previous roll. Is there any objection to that request? Hearing none, the motion passes and the resolution is approved. Moving on to 23 PT 24, approving second amendment to the contract with HDR Engineering, Inc. Can you walk us through that one, please?
Yes, so for the South Riverfront redevelopment project, this particular resolution covers two components. One is a survey of ground about 250 yards west of the current South Refuse site. To see, there's a lot of open ground in the middle of it that we think would be suitable for a new trash transfer building. The current trash transfer building and everything else on South Refuse uses about 80,000 square feet, and the open ground to the west is about 147,000 square feet. So those parcels are owned by the city, and the purpose of this is to survey that site. It's higher ground, so we would get things like the elevation, there's a road on it, how wide the road is, et cetera. And so that's one part of this resolution to expand HDR scope. And the other is in doing environmental assessments of the incinerators, crud at the bottom, ash and such, some heavy metals were found, and that triggers a state law that says they have to look for other kinds of contaminants, and so that would add a little bit to the HDR scope as well. So the two scopes together add up to about 32,000. I'm looking at my numbers here. 32,000 for the survey of the site just to the west of South Refuse, and about 3,800 to the additional testing. So the total is about 36,000 added to their contract.
Okay, and so the amount is not to exceed $36,339.82 is what's in the resolution. Is that accurate?
Yes, that's correct. And as you heard, I mean, we have the 25,000 in professional engineering for FY24, and that will trigger the 25,000 ARPA match. So we have the funds to cover this particular. I mean, we have other funds as well, but this happens to be professional engineering funds, and so we want to spend it on professional engineering.
Correct. And so if this were approved, then we use monies allocated from previous resolutions from today's meeting to pay for it. Is that correct?
That's right.
Okay.
That's right.
Are there any questions for Susan on this resolution? Alderman Cone?
Yeah, but I'll reserve my questions. I have a lot of them, but they're somewhat germane to this resolution, but I'll reserve them for later. Thank you.
Understood. Thank you. Any other questions on this resolution? Hearing none, I'd entertain a motion to approve resolution 23 PT 24.
So moved.
Is there a second?
I'll second.
Moved and seconded. Maybe a roll call vote, please.
Commissioner Miller,
Aye.
Commissioner Cone,
Present.
Commissioner Kay,
Aye.
Commissioner Williams,
Aye.
Chair McBride.
Aye. Motion passes and the resolution is approved. We're going to move on to resolution 23 PT 25, recommending that the Board of Public Service approve a permit for Artco. Susan, can you walk us through this, please?
Yes, Artco has a grain elevator. Artco is ADM's in-house barge line, and ADM has a grain elevator on the North Riverfront at the foot of East Prairie. And they had a long time lease there. They walked away from it, and then they came back and wanted to renew it. So we started doing that, but then there were they wanted a little more. And so there was some confusion as to property ownership in that area. There are a lot of small parcels at the foot of the city's edge, and it's hard to find ownership. And so what we did was we agreed to lease to them mooring under a permit, which we gave them last year, while the survey played out. That's been done, and now we're waiting for the ordinance to play out. And the ordinance isn't going to happen until after the permit ends, so we want to do a second permit to keep them, to enable them to keep functioning there. They have a bunch of barges parked there, a fleeting lease. So the purpose of this is to give them another one-year permit while the ordinance process plays out, so that they can get a full lease. And the document attached is same as the lease. It's a permit, but it just would change over the verbiage from permit to lease. So the goal is to keep them operating while we wait for the lease to become final.
Okay. And you said they walked away from the lease. Did we put it out for bid in that interim time?
Yes, we did, and we got one response, and the fellow, we could not negotiate a lease with him. The respondent walked away from the negotiation, and then ADM called and said, we'd like to renew or resume leasing there, and so we started negotiating with them.
Okay. And is the second permit, the one that's before us today, is that an increased amount over the amount paid in the first permit?
No, it's the same linear footage and the same dollar amount.
Okay. And I thought there'd be escalator clauses in the lease, though. Would that be correct?
Yes, there will be.
And this comports with the new policy as instituted, right before the pandemic on the mooring rights?
Yes, the rates they were paying under the old lease followed the minimum requirements set by the ordinance. I think it's 56933. And that's the minimum floor. We don't use that floor anymore. We use market rates. And so this is a market rate lease. So it's probably triple what they were paying before.
Very good. Any questions for Susan on this resolution? Alderman Cone.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Susan, I'm curious. So when they came back to resume negotiations, what was their purpose for walking away? And I mean, does that mean that we have a little more hand in these negotiations at this point in time?
I asked them that when they decided not to renew. I asked them that. I said, why do you want to not keep the lease? And they said, well, we thought we were going to use it to stage our barges, and we haven't really done that, so it's not really valuable to us. Okay, fine. So we put it out for bid. And when ADM/ARCO came back to us, it's evidently they've got other customers, but their freight landscape, I guess, has changed. And so now they've got a fleet there. They got a bunch of barges parked there. And the fleeting rate is the highest rate that we have. It's higher than any of the other mooring rates because it's the most valuable. So it's currently at about $65 a linear foot. And the mandated minimum is $18.75. So we're charging quite a bit more than the minimum. And when we get new leases coming up, we're going to push to upper 60s, maybe to $70. So we keep trying to stay abreast of the current rate.
That's great. So, and then I guess a follow up to that. So you mentioned the grain elevator as well. This action is just related to the moorings. It's not related to the grain elevator.
Yeah, they own the land under the grain elevator, and there's probably about 10 little parcels just in that area, and some of them are owned by them, some by the city. And so the grain elevator is their property.
Okay. Okay, thank you.
Any other questions for Susan on this resolution? Hearing none, I'd entertain a motion to approve resolution 23 PT 25.
So moved, Alderman Cone.
Second, Alderman Kay.
Properly,
I'm not sorry, I promoted myself to Commissioner.
no, we do have 15 aldermen now. Okay. We'll have a roll call vote, please.
There was an extension last time, or a present.
That's why we'll have a roll call vote.
Commissioner Miller,
Aye.
Commissioner Cone,
Aye.
Commissioner Kay,
Aye.
Commissioner Williams,
Aye.
Chair McBride.
Aye. The motion passes and the resolution is approved. Moving on to resolution 23 PT 26. Recommending to the Board of Public Service that there be a 1-year permit to the U.S. Army Corps of Engineers. Susan, can you walk us through that, please?
Yes, this is the second request from the Army Corps to inspect property around Malincrot's manufacturing complex on the North Riverfront. And this particular one is for them to go on site and look for contaminated soil from Malincrot's activities in the 40s and 50s to, that Malincrot was one of the entities working on the atomic bomb. And so the Corps looks for, they go on site, the 2 parcels that you can see in your packet, and they have Geiger counters or whatever, but they look for contaminants, and then if they find them, they have to pull them out of the soil. They do remediation. So this is, it's the acronym, it's a formerly utilized Sites Remedial Action Program, FUSRAP. They did one earlier that found nothing, kind of in the same general area, so they, for whatever reason, they want to go back and look at some other properties in this same general area. So if you approve this, then we go to BPS and say, please give them a permit to go on to city property to investigate.
And is that part of their application that if they were to find radioactive materials, that the federal government would pay for that removal?
Yeah, it's a environmental remediation program to test for and remediate contamination. So yes, they would cover both ends of the project, the search and the removal of contaminants.
Okay. Any questions for Susan on this resolution? Hearing none, I'd entertain a motion to approve resolution 23 PT 26.
So moved, Alderman Cone.
Second, Commissioner Miller.
Previous roll.
It's been properly moved and seconded with request for previous roll. Is there any objection to that request? Hearing none, the motion passes and the resolution is approved. Moving on to open agenda. Looks like we have a report from our lobbyist at Jones Walker.
Good morning. This is Chris Johnson, and I'm joined by Robert Mariner. Robert, I think you're muted, but you may want to unmute. Let me start.
Yeah, I'm here, Chris.
Thanks, Robert. Let me start by giving a big picture of what's happening in Washington, and then we'll get down to some of the specifics that we're working on for the port. We're headed to a very turbulent fall in Washington. The partisanship in the Congress remains at an all-time high. And in particular, we think that the chances are very high, unfortunately, for a federal government shutdown sometime this fall. The federal government operates on a fiscal year that ends on September 30. And the Congress has to pass, the president has to sign spending bills to keep the federal government open by September 30, or else the government shuts down. Not a single appropriations bill has been signed into law or even made it out of the House and Senate into the White House at this point. And so at some point, given the partisanship and the close margins in the House of Representatives, it appears that we're going to head towards a train wreck of some sort and have a government shutdown. Reason I mention that, of course, is that a government shutdown affects the Coast Guard, affects a lot of other agencies that on a federal level that the Port of St. Louis has to interact with. Historically, most Coast Guard officers have been deemed essential personnel. So in the event of a shutdown, most of the Coast Guard folks will still work. But it could, we'll have to see, but it could have some temporary negative impacts on trade on the river. So I wish that wasn't the case, but that looks like it's more likely than not sometime this fall. As relates to specific things we've been working on with Susan for the port, there's been discussion already and several resolutions related to the South Riverfront Development Project. We've been working, Robert and I have been working with Susan to identify federal grants that the port might be eligible to receive to assist the port in coming up with sufficient funds to meet the 50% ARPA match on that project. We've identified the RAISE program, which has an application deadline in February as a potential grant that the port can pursue. We're also looking at several EPA brownfield grants that could also work, and there may be some others that we identify. There are of course a lot of new federal grant programs that have been stood up since the adoption of the federal infrastructure bill that the president and the Congress worked on and got passed a year or so ago. So we're looking at all of those in hopes that we can assist Susan and her colleagues on the board in getting some additional funds so that you all can enjoy the full benefit of the ARPA funds from MoDOT. So that has been our primary focus and will be as we head into the fall. Robert, anything to add from your standpoint?
Chris, not at this, excuse me, Chris, not at this time. I'm, keeping my ear to the ground with regards to activities that come out of the Maritime Administration, as well as the department as a whole. So we'll definitely, make Susan aware of any opportunities that present themselves, to include RAISE and other opportunities once they're made available.
Great, thanks, Robert. So Susan, really that's our update, but we're glad to take any questions.
Thank you. Any questions for our lobbyists from the commissioners? Alderman Cohen.
Yeah, not so much a question as much as I don't think I've mentioned this before, but I just think that Mariner is a pretty appropriate name for someone who's working in maritime efforts. I think that's pretty snazzy there, but
Well, thank
total
you.
coincidence, I'm sure, but
Owe it all to my
pretty
parents.
cool. Yeah, exactly.
Perfect. All right. Well, thank you, gentlemen. We appreciate your efforts and like you said, these partisan times. So thank you for your efforts and hopefully we get some good successes coming down the line.
Thank you.
Very good. Next up is our financial report from Charlie Hahn.
Mr. Chairman, obviously, there's nothing in your packet this month. Thought I could get it in, but it's the end of the year report. I wanted to make sure it mimicked what you would see in the audit report. So if I could defer that for till your next meeting, I would appreciate it.
I see no issue with that. We'll take it up at the next meeting. Thank you, Charlie. Anything else in open agenda?
Not at this time, Chairman McBride. Thank you.
Susan, did you have anything?
I do. So next Thursday, next meeting, next September 14th, Thursday, I'm going to be at a port conference in Bemidji, Wisconsin. So would the commissioners be available to meet Friday morning, the September 15th?
What was the date, Susan?
Friday, the September 15th. So it'd be a day after the scheduled Friday, Thursday the 14th.
At 9, I don't think I would be, but that's just me.
Yeah.
'Cause I have a docket then.
And you're muted, Tanya. I appear to be free on the morning of September 15th.
As am I.
I'm not available. I'm out of town. I'm at Judicial College.
And we can circulate an email if the other commissioners need time to review their calendars and get back with Susan, if that's preferable.
Okay, I can do that.
Okay, we'll circulate an email. All right. Anything else, Susan, in open agenda?
No, our 3 cruise lines are coming to the riverfront, so that's good. Viking and American Queen voyages and American Cruise Line. So hopefully they'll all of their passengers will come out into the city and spend money and stay in our hotels and all that good stuff.
Very good. All right. Anything from the commissioners in open agenda?
I apologize for my lateness. I had some software installing behind what I was trying to, when I was trying to log on, and I didn't know that it was installing. So I'm so sorry.
No problem at
You
all.
know, I'm in the building because I have some in-person trials at 10, and I went to the 2nd floor and looked around, and Susan, there is a voicemail. I thought I would actually be in the room with you guys. So then I had to run downstairs and log on. So anyway, good to see you. Anyway.
Yeah. We're in A these days because it has the screen.
So they're in the offices themselves, not the large conference
Right.
room. Okay.
I went
Right.
to the large conference room, and then since Deborah's not there today, the substitute didn't know where you guys were. But anyway, it's all good. But that's why I was running late too.
No problem. No problem.
I was
All
running
right.
much later than you were.
Okay.
Our next meeting will not be Thursday, the 14th. Susan will circulate a invite for what we anticipate maybe the 15th, if we can get the commissioners together on that date, but we'll find a subsequent date to hold this meeting in September. If there's no further business, then I would entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Second.
Moved and seconded. We are adjourned. Thank you all.
Thank you.